for me, you are kind of one of the flagship people for having that balance. So then the question, how do you find the balance in all of this?
I am smiling because that is the number one question that I get. But what is helping me, as I'm on this journey on trying to figure out what balance looks like and what it feels like on a soul level, has been getting back to my why. I really had to get back to what is my why? And then saying no to everything else. People ask me all the time, do you code? And I'm like, actually, I don't code. There are a lot of other things that are just as equally as important to thrive in this space. What has really helped me is my particular soft skills, being able to have the conversations and being able to talk to my engineers and really get them to understand why we're focused on the thing that we're focused on, and getting their buy-in that way has gone a long way versus me having boots on the ground trying to build it myself. So soft skills are so important. I can't stress it enough.
So many people always ask, how do you find the courage to speak up?
I think that it's easy to let imposter syndrome make you feel like you're not capable or you're not supposed to be in these rooms or you're not adding value. But I also think, to your point, that's why it's important to have mentors in your community around you, that when you start to doubt yourself, they remind you of all your capabilities and how powerful you are and why you are supposed to be in those spaces.
So many people are so closed, right? They're so closed about the journey and keeping things almost like the gatekeeping thing, but just keeping the opportunity to themselves, not realizing that there's so much room. There's so much room for everyone. And
I think the best advice that I've ever received is to lift as you climb. I think for me, it's really important that as trailblazers in this space where we are the folks that are kind of new in this space, especially when women of color and here make up less than 2% of tech jobs. I think that it's so important to, as we as trailblazers are in the space, learning new things, using our voice to create room and hopefully speak on topics that are going to help folks coming behind us and create these pipelines.
Hey everyone, today I am super excited to be speaking to Courtney Hayes. Now, Courtney is a senior cybersecurity program owner and industry specialist at AWS. Courtney has over 10 years of experience in cybersecurity, and she is an absolute dominating figure in tech as a whole. She's also an advocate and champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. She also heads up external events and networking sessions for Amazon and beyond. She is very well known on social platforms as the Cybersecurity Babe, especially on Instagram. This is Cybersecurity Uncomplicated with Cyber Queen, where we break barriers one chat at a time. No one has the exact roadmap, but together we're challenging stereotypes. We'll show you that cybersecurity is for everyone. We're bold, smart, and unapologetically diverse. Courtney, I'm so excited to be chatting with you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you, and I hope everyone just finds a ton of value in our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so looking forward to it. So, right off, as we start, can you maybe expand a little bit? I know I started kind of introducing your whole professional background here, but tell us a little bit about who is Courtney?
Okay. So, like you've mentioned, I've been in the tech industry for a little over 10 years, and something I kind of pride myself on, and I share on my platform just to encourage more folks to take that risk and be bold to come into the space is I have a very peculiar journey, a very non-traditional journey into the cybersecurity space. So I know a lot of folks feel like they need to have this super technical background or have a technical degree. And I actually have my undergrad degree in business management, and I also have my MBA. So I didn't go to school for tech. That wasn't my initial choice, but just getting exposure to it and honestly wanting to find a career that paid really well and it was a ton of stability. It really just piqued my interest, and I started doing just a lot of research around it a little over a decade ago. And what I honestly did was I knew I had a knack for learning because I had all these degrees. And I knew that I had a lot of problem solving, analytical skills and things like that. So I was like, how do I take these transferable skills and how do I show to recruiters and to hiring managers that, maybe I don't have the technical skills today, but I do have a lot of skills that can transfer over that makes sense in this industry, and kind of just get their buy-in on like spending the time to put me through boot camps or getting different certifications to just really upskill and learn. So for me, it was cool because they invested in me with getting my CompTIA Security Plus and my security clearance. And I just spent a lot of time like learning different security domains and figuring out like what was really interesting to me and upskilling in that particular area. And then it just started opening doors. So I've been in the tech industry, like I said, over 10 years. Today, I spend a lot of time with my organizations in the past where I come in, I look at the current security posture, and I look at the current processes and mechanisms, and we figure out like, what can we do to raise the bar? How do we ensure that we're not lowering the security posture, maybe through the current toolings that we're using, things like that. I also spend a lot of time ensuring that organizations remain compliant to some of the security standards that they are required to adhere to. And doing that, I have to just try to understand like some of the risk and some of the vulnerabilities that comes with having to adhere to these things. And if there are exceptions to different rules and things like that, going in and having those conversations, writing the security recommendations so we don't end up on the news, and then working with my team of engineers to figure out like, how do we make toolings and things better? How do we continue to expand that and things of that nature? So I enjoy doing that outside of the things that I'm doing in big tech. I also have my own business where it's the chic tech firm where I focus on empowering women to succeed in tech. So it looks like creating different roadmaps and also doing coachings and things like that. And I am a Pilates girl. That's what keeps me sane. I feel like when working in such a very high-paced industry that does require a lot of you and it's very demanding, I do need my time to recenter, reground. So for me, I've just found a ton of joy in doing Pilates. I do solid core specifically. So I'm 50 minutes under the blue lights. I can just disconnect from everything. And it just really helps me just keep a healthy balance. And then I found this new love for tennis. So spending some time with an instructor, getting outdoors, moving my body, like trying to keep up with just sticking to the basics. I always tell myself, doing devotion, having water, eating, moving my body is what keeps me going in this industry. So tennis has been like my new love today too.
You're working in big tech. You have your own initiative and your own business that you're driving. And I think for me personally, looking at your journey, your online journey, I always aspire to have the balance, right? And for me, you are kind of one of the flagship people for having that balance, because I mean, also coming from big tech, I know that it can be tough to have a balance when it comes to big tech and working with many different customers. But I mean, you're doing so much for yourself, your health outside of big tech. So then the question, how do you find the balance in all of this?
I am smiling because that is the number one question that I get. And I'm still trying to figure it out. But what is helping me, like as I'm on this journey on trying to figure out what balance looks like and what it feels like on a soul level, has been getting back to my why. And for me, I think that it helps dictate opportunities that I'm accepting, events that I'm curating, how I'm showing up online, things that I am giving my time to. Like I really had to get back to like, what is my why? And then saying no to everything else, right? For me, what has helped with balance as well is trying to enforce like healthy boundaries. So working in big tech, we do know that it can be extremely fast paced. If things are kind of on fire or if there are situations that are coming that require my attention, I have to jump on those things. But I am trying to just be really intentional on like carving out time on the weekends where I'm just doing things that literally make my soul smile. So whether it's doing Pilates or getting outside, things like that. I feel like during the week, I will try to do my task list where I'm prioritizing like my A things, my B things, my C things, and then spending time on the things that have the higher priority. And then if I can't get to it that day, it's fine. I'm giving myself some grace. I'm just moving it around to where it has the least impact if I don't get to it like within that day or two and figuring it out that way. I think that at this point, for just boundaries, I think for a lot of us is trying to figure out like, what is the priority? I don't think I have all the answers on like telling folks how to prioritize, but I do think it goes back to like, what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make what makes sense, like in that moment when you think about like the goals that you're trying to reach, and where can you invest your time where it's not hopefully taking away from other things in a way that is causing like a complete misbalance or causing issues with like you hitting certain goals or things like that. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I heard that balance doesn't exist. I heard that it's more so harmony. Like, how do you make things fit and work together? So that's kind of where I am with that, and just writing things out, sticking to my planner.
Yeah. A planner, even for me, is so important. And this year, I've really been trying to practice kind of good practices around, especially productivity and around things that are important to me. But like you're saying, finding that balance is like, it's either doesn't exist or it's just so hard to find. But I think it also more so comes to how maybe confident you are in your skills in your workplace and in doing your work, right? Because I find that a lot of people would struggle to disconnect from work if they don't feel confident and skilled enough to do the work that they're doing at that point in time. So, I mean, being in such a demanding role in big tech, I mean, how has your experience been, and how have you kind of grounded yourself to get into the space where you are right now and doing the work that you're doing right now?
Okay, that's a good question. And I think that also ties into how some of us, especially women of color, like in this space, like dealing with imposter syndrome. So I think for me, like something you hit on is I remind myself often, and I remind myself and peers that there is a reason why I'm here. There is a reason that I'm tasked with solving the problems that I'm solving, and that I am more than capable, that I have the skill set, and that I can basically just do anything that I put my mind to, like literally. Like, I know that sounds so cliche, but those are the things that I'm constantly reminding myself. And I've really just have taken time to just hone into my skill. So if that means continuous learnings, or if there are different newsletters that I can subscribe to stay abreast on tech trends that are coming up and coming out that I need to learn or just stay ahead of, so that I continue to feel empowered and it's me in my space, like I'm going to do that. I think that building the confidence to know that you are this me in that area, that you have the skill set, and that it kind of inspires you to just be really, really bold. I think that has really helped me just own my space. And also just remembering that I have a voice. I know that specifically in cybersecurity, because the audience, the customers are very diverse, they need my diverse perspective. Like, I bring a very different skill set. I bring a very different way of solving problems. I bring a very different way of how I communicate. And I always just think to myself, and I tell other folks, think how boring things would be if everybody thought the same. Think about how not diverse or complex our solutions would be if everybody thought the same as well. And I think that innovation definitely comes from different perspectives. So knowing that I add value in that particular way always keeps me very inspired, but also taking time to continuously upscale and also stay on top of like things that I know that are coming into the area, or things maybe I don't know, but just asking like my bosses and things like that for opportunities to learn and get different certifications has really been just really beneficial in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you. I was speaking to one of my mentors earlier this week, and we really came to this conclusion that like leadership these days, and especially in the technology space, is not so much about what you know, but it's about like what you're willing to learn, right? Because at the end of the day, as a leader or as a technical professional, it's impossible, and especially in security, to know it all, but it's about what you're willing to learn. And then you made another great point around that unique perspective. So many people always ask, like, how do you find the courage to speak up, right? And for me, the shift came really in understanding that it's not about that I have the answer. Like, that's not the reason to speak up, that you have the best answer or, the right response. It's the fact that I have a unique approach to maybe addressing and solving your problem, and so the unique perspective is what matters. And I mean, you touch so hard on it. And I think maybe more so in big tech, right? It's so required that you come in with that fresh, different perspective.
I agree. And I think that it's easy to let imposter syndrome make you feel like you're not capable or you're not supposed to be in these rooms or you're not adding value. But I also think, to your point, that's why it's important to have mentors in your community around you, that when you start to doubt yourself, they remind you of all your capabilities and how powerful you are and why you are supposed to be in those spaces. So I would say community and just my mentors, my sponsors have also really helped me like navigate this space by reminding me of those things when I've needed it most. So
amazing. Next, I really want to ask you, so getting the job that you have, what does it take to get the job that you have?
So I have a very multifaceted role, which is really interesting, but I also think that it helps, I don't know, no 2 days feel like the same a lot of times. So I think this a really important skill set is one, being able to understand the identity and access management domain. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out like, how do we make access management better from like a user perspective so that customers, like internal customers, have the information they need to make the best decision that's going to help protect like our very, very critical data, things like that. So I would say understanding identity access management, also having experiences in implementing, writing, and creating security controls. But that also ties into learning and understanding like, what does data classification look like and sound like? What does the risk matrix look like and sound like? Because depending on how data is classified, when we think about criticality, it's going to determine what type of controls we think needs to be applied. And the controls are what's going to safeguard data in lieu of protecting from breaches and things like that. In addition to that, being a really strong writer in a lot of the organizations that I've worked for in big tech, we're not using PowerPoints. Like we are writing docs that have to go in front of leadership and things like that. So being able to really pull out the problem that you're trying to solve and going in and going through and writing out like your recommendations and being able to like pull out that information is key. And I think that even with the MBA, I thought I was a very strong writer, but those are things I had to refine like as I've just grown in my career as well. And then the biggest part of it is understanding the risk governance and compliance portion of it. I don't spend a whole lot of time on compliance frameworks like NIST and FedRAMP and things like that. It's good to know depending on how in depth you want to go in that particular domain. But for me, I do ensure, not even with this particular company, but other companies I've worked for, just ensuring that we adhere to certain security standards. So being able to understand like the why, the different requirements that are tied to it, and what are the gaps that my team or I need to solve to ensure that we're meeting those requirements are really important. And then in addition to like your basic soft skills, which are going to be like, how do you communicate? Are you able to communicate cross-functionally across teams? If you're an individual contributor, can you lead without authority? Because you need engineers. I work with engineers, I work with lawyers all day, every day. I work with my other senior leaders. As an individual contributor, a lot of times I have to get folks to do things without them directly reporting to me. So how are you leveraging relationships to do that? How are you showing up to build trust so they know that, so they feel like you know what you're talking about? And I think a lot of us get away from like having these soft skills and thinking that in order to thrive, you need these hard technical skills. You need both. So yeah.
Absolutely. So well said. A lot of focus for people trying to either pivot or enter into the security industry is around technical skills. And I vividly recall about a month ago or so, I added a video on YouTube that was specifically focused around the non-technical skills and around the soft skills. And some of the main questions are around the fact that while all people can say they have these skills, right? So why, even mention you have these skills? But I think these skills are so underrated, and it's an experience that I have. It's an experience that you have. And many people don't understand the criticality of those skills, especially once you are in the workforce. And once you get the job, like I feel like the organization has already hired you for knowing that you are capable of doing the technical work. You can ramp up on the technical knowledge, but they're actually hiring you for the right aptitude, for the right capabilities on the soft skill side, more than even the technical side, because the technical side can always be learned much faster, I feel like, than, the soft skills side. So what's your view on that?
I agree. And I feel like as you start to, like, if you desire to continue to like grow or climb the ladder within your role, you have to be able to influence, you have to be able to lead in a way where you're giving the objective, you're giving the visions. Like, these are all soft skills, like how you're communicating these things. Like, how are you getting folks really bought in to do this work? And that's going to come with, like, have you spent time like honing in on how to communicate, how to sell a vision, how to build the relationships? When I think about like some of our leadership principles, like around trust, you can get folks to really care about doing a work and solving a problem if they trust in, one, your ability, and two, what the organization is trying to do. And I think that trust has to be something that is built through your interactions with folks. It's through conversations, it's through actions. Like, are you really following through on the things that you're saying you're going to follow through on? And I've seen folks where they are probably extremely technical. They can build these really cool things and mechanisms, but they're not really good people managers. And you see attrition just skyrocketing. And it's like, okay, you want folks to have these technical skill sets, but you have to ensure like it's a balance, and it has to be a balance. And I always find it interesting because people ask me all the time, like, do you code? And I'm like, actually, I don't code. There are a lot of other things that are just as equally as important to thrive in this space. And it has really helped me is my particular soft skills, like being able to have the conversations and being able to talk to my engineers and really get them to understand like why we're focused on the thing that we're focused on, and getting their buy-in that way has gone a long way versus me having boots on the ground trying to build it myself. So soft skills are so important. I can't stress it enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you mentioned, the fundamental question of, do you code? And it's such a common question and such a common misconception that all of us that work in security, whether technical, not so technical, leadership, whichever role, like the misconception is there that, right, we're coders. However, you mentioned that you work with customers, with engineers, with leadership. You work with so many different stakeholders. So without having kind of the knowledge of hands-on coding, or without being a hands-on coder, how do you find the getting those people's buy-in, right? Because you have to get many different stakeholders to buy into your idea, your principle, your initiative, so how do you go about that?
I do want to set the tone that I have never coded in over 10 years. Like, I can run basic script, but I've never coded. And I kind of pride myself on that because I want folks to realize, like, I try to debunk the myth that you can only work in tech if you code, and that's not true. So I just want folks to realize there's so many opportunities outside of just coding. Okay. So for me, because I do spend a lot of time with stakeholders, I ask a lot of questions to really understand, like, what are their pain points and what are the problems that they feel like we need to solve? You don't need a code to do that. It's really having the conversations and collecting requirements and just really trying to deep dive and understand like what those problems are. And then working backwards, I start to look through like, what are some of the alternatives? What are some of the paths forwards and solutions or mechanisms that we can put into place to help really solve these problems? And I feel like once I figured those things out, then I'm able to go in and propose different solutions. And if it's something that needs to be built, then we have our engineers to do that. But to get buy-in is more so like, if folks feel like you care about what they care about, and if folks feel like you care about their problems and you're doing things to address those problems, you tend to get folks' attention. So I just tell like people around me that are interested in going into this industry, like, are you a good active listener? Like, do you really understand how to interpret what someone's telling you and being able to tell that story back to someone that needs to build it, that does have the coding skills that maybe that you don't have? But getting the buy-in really has been like, what are the problems that I can solve for you? And then earning their trust. And I think being bold and confident in the work that I'm doing, it translates to, okay, she is a SME in the space. So if she's telling us that she can do this thing and she's collecting the requirements and she's spending time with us to understand my pain point, I think she has the capability to solve these problems. And that typically gains trust and allows me to really just push forward with the solution.
Yeah, I really like that approach and that methodology. And I think it's also that it's not about you having the correct solution, but it's always about you having the right intent, right?
Right.
So the intent of protecting the business, the customer, whoever it may be, and helping them move forward goes like a longer way than you trying to have the right solution right up front or trying to be the smartest right up front. I feel like there's so many smart minds and like bringing it all together, that's like a superpower. And I feel like in your role, that's kind of the superpower that you have to have, because you have to really bring all these different stakeholders to understand what you're putting forward and to get their buy-in.
Right, which isn't always the easiest because everyone has a different background or different way of doing things, or the needs are just different. But that is definitely a superpower. If you can deal with very ambiguous environments and also being someone that doesn't need a ton of direction to figure out paths forward, like you are the person that is defining that particular process or methodology, then you tend to do really well in these spaces where you are dealing with different stakeholders that have different opinions and different problems. But yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah.
So now I want to ask, so you work in big tech and you have a job that many people aspire to have. If you consider kind of a couple of steps back here into, let's say, newbies into the industry or people who want to pivot in and they want to kind of pursue their opportunity at big tech, what are some of the things that you think that are the cause of people failing during the recruitment or interview process specifically for big tech?
Wow, that is such a good question, and I've talked about this just often with even friends and other colleagues. But I sit on a lot of big tech loops, so I'm looking at resumes, and these resumes are outstanding. Folks have a lot of good experience. They're taking time to get the hands-on experience and also the certifications. Maybe they went to school for things like that. Where I think we're seeing some of the misses is folks are really having a hard time getting through the loops. And just listening to some of the interviewees, I'm not sure folks feel as comfortable and confident being able to tell a story on the impact that they had when they were doing certain roles, or maybe not being able to articulate the problems that they were solving within the organization, or what were the security outcomes that they drove. I think my feedback or my advice to folks would be get really comfortable selling yourself and being very specific in telling your story. Get back to the basics. Interview feedback or interview responses should always follow like the STAR format. And I don't know if folks are still doing that, but it's like describe your situation, describe the task and action that you took, and describe like the results. What was the impact of you doing this great work? And being able to articulate that to really get it across to whoever is interviewing you, I think that's really important. But I think that's the thing that folks have been struggling the most with, is just being able to brag on themselves. And I never want people to feel like bragging is a bad thing. It's not. Like, if an interview is you really, really selling your skill set and really selling like who you are and why you are the right person for the particular role. So you do have to really go in there and talk about your expertise and talk about all the cool things that you've been working on. Talk about the things that you've done to maybe improve the security posture, but you have to get in front of folks and feel comfortable and bold enough to really like tell that story. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be, which I talk a lot about on my Instagram, is I don't want folks to get so caught up in certification stacking. Like, figure out, like, if you're someone that's new in the space and maybe because it is so broad, you don't know what you want to focus on. I tell folks, like, start with the very basic. Some of them are free. Like, I think it's like the Google certification where you can go through the basic cybersecurity course and it goes through all 8 of the security domains. And then you can spend time, like, see what particular security domain is interesting to you, pull that out and start to do more research in that, like start to upskill in that particular thing. Like, it is very overwhelming and daunting for anybody to try to learn all the security domains or spend so much time watering it down because you're focused on just too many things. So pick the specific security domain that you're interested in and then work backwards. Make Google your best friend. Find out what certifications, what hands-on experience, what are those things that tie to that particular security domain, and get those certifications. And then even when you get the certification, that is still not enough. Like, you're going to have to show to the hiring manager and to the recruiters and things like that, that you actually understand how to do the work. Like, what is your technical aptitude, or what are the skill sets that you've picked up from that particular certification? So I tell folks, like, try Hack Me or Hack the Box, where you can get hands-on experience and then take that and start building out your own portfolios. But I think those are the things that are missing. Being able to show that you do have that hands-on experience and being able to really tell your story of the impact that you made and the security outcomes that you drove.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And this actually just gave me an idea because I fully agree with you on the cert stacking. Like, it's such a peeve of mine because when people ask about, like, I would get the question of, I've done 4 certifications, I can't get a job, right? And then my first thing would be, okay, what skills do you have? Because it's like the cert stacking is just, I think it's just an industry misconception that you have to have all the certifications possible, like right before you even go for the job. But then not even having the skills, firstly, to interview, and then secondly, to do the work. I feel like that's such a big, like, it's a missing piece of the puzzle, right? So I got an idea. Like, as I was listening to you, I got an idea. So go with me here on this idea.
Okay. Yes.
So I am going to attempt to answer or to display a star formatted response, right, to you based off of, let's say, a security analyst. All right. So I'm a security analyst and I want to work in big tech. And now I'm going to give you a star formatted response. And then you tell me how I'm doing in this response so that anyone who's listening, going for this interview process, they can understand what this means. All right. Okay. So firstly, let's break down the STAR format. So I think it's situation, task, action, result, right? That's what we want to know.
Yep.
All right. Perfect. So here I go. I'm a security analyst. So I would say in my role as a security analyst, I was faced with a situation where we had a really critical alert on our SIM, our security incident and event management platform. And with this, my task was really to quickly assess the risk and severity of the situation so that I could determine if this resulted in an actual breach for the organization and if we had any sensitive data impacted by this. So the first action I took was really to isolate the affected server and to prevent any lateral movement or any unauthorized access from accessing this server. I then started investigating the IP addresses, and I then started to check into any other logs, whether we had any commonalities. So I then was able to determine that this was done based off of a brute force attack by this particular IP address. So in the firewall itself, I was able to then go and initiate a block of this IP address. And as a result, this resulted in prevention of data exfiltration from the server, so it couldn't harm our systems. So our further team then also reviewed the incident, and they then went on to take on stronger response protocols. So this helped to reduce the average incident response time by 20%, and it really increased awareness across our entire security operations center. How did I do?
I think you did fantastic. And the reason being is you were very, very specific on what the business problem was that you needed to address. You gave very specific action steps of what you took to solve that problem. And then I think the biggest thing that a lot of folks don't do is provide metrics. Like, we want to hear data metrics. We want to hear, is this something that's always happening? What was happening before? What's changed? How is it measurable? And I think you gave very specific data metrics on the impact and what the outcome was. So that was great. Very specific to the STAR method.
Yay. Are you going to hire me?
Yeah. So it sounds like the next step would be now. Yeah. Like you were able to demonstrate your skill set and not just talk about all these different accolades. So yeah, I would hire you.
Thank you. All right. So I want to pause there, and then I want to go to the next section here, which is what we call rapid fire. So with rapid fire, are you ready? I'm going to throw you a bunch of questions, personal, professional, random, and then you just answer them with the first thoughts that come to mind.
Okay. Let me buckle up for this. I don't know how ready I am. I guess I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, all right. I'll start with an easy one. All right. On your busiest day at home or in the office, is your go-to beverage tea or coffee or anything else?
Celsius. And I just got into cold brew. I need the caffeine. It gives me a good little boost. And I feel like with Celsius, I don't feel guilty because supposedly it has cleaner products than like Red Bull. So that's going to be my go-to.
Awesome. What is your favorite cybersecurity tool, or let's go with process or framework?
Okay, so I think a lot of the tools that I'm using now are internal. So I think my favorite today, trying to think, because I just got into like learning more about NIST as well. I would say a lot of the NIST frameworks. I think because it's really easy to I won't say easy, but I feel like there's enough verbiage and context where you're trying to figure out if the security controls that you're working with are accurate and what are some of the things that are needed. Because if anything is missing, you're obviously increasing probabilities of having breaches and things like that. So I think my favorite framework right now would be things that fall into the NIST framework and using that to really baseline like a lot of the security controls that we're working with to make sure that we're not lowering like the security posture, things like that.
That's a great response.
Okay.
Next one. What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The impact. I serve on Amazon's Black Employee Network for the DMV area as a director of events. And even thinking about it right now, it's giving me goosebumps because having the influence and the ability to curate these marquee events for people that look like me that are so underrepresented, that sometimes feel very unseen, unheard, and not valued, being able to create this really strong safe space for them to really come together, whether it's to stave off feelings of isolation, whether it's to like learn some new industry insight, because typically at our events, we're having speakers, we have executives there, folks from all different backgrounds that can literally come into these rooms and talk about a lot of the cool things that they're doing or best practices or things that work, things that hadn't worked for them. And folks have left with mentors and sponsors, and it's just been amazing to create those spaces. I think that community is one of the biggest reasons that have kept a lot of us in these just high pace, very demanding roles in companies. So I think being able to contribute to creating those spaces for us has been just, I don't know, just it feels good. Like it just feels right. And we've seen how it's helped retain employees. We've seen how it's reduced attrition. And I just really think it's important that if someone is at a company that has employee relation groups, find your community. It definitely makes a difference. Like make sure that you are creating inclusive spaces and trying to build relationships with everybody, right? Because you need folks. You need to be able to get along with your teammates. But it helps when you have someone that maybe they're going through the same things. Maybe culturally they understand certain cues or contexts. Maybe there's certain experiences that they can relate to, that you can relate to, and hearing their stories and hearing what has helped them just succeed, like it makes a difference. So that for me has been really impactful in my role.
Yeah, community is so impactful. And I really want to talk with you about that a lot more, because I think that is so important. Like it's such an important part of your journey and such an important part of giving back and building community. And so I want to get into that a lot more. And I can even like just feel the passion, and I can hear the passion when you speak about it. So we definitely have to speak about that. But before we get that, so now I want to know, if you were not working in tech and in security, what would your alternate career be?
Oh, that's so easy because I think about this every day. I would be a full-time travel content creator where I would want to like be sent on brand partnerships to go try out different hotels. Like send me to the Maldives. Like I want to stay at your hotel in the Maldives, give you reviews, and then you pay me and then you give me a free stay. I want to go to 80 continents, countries. Like I just want to travel the world. And I feel like working in tech, like it's very lucrative. So it does give me opportunities to travel, but not as much as I would want to, because it's also like you have to perform. Like there is a bar, like you have to perform, and taking away too much time, sometimes it makes you feel like you're going to fall behind. So I don't travel as much as I would like to because of that. So if I could be a full-time travel content creator, like put me on somebody's flight.
It sounds like a dream job. So then
Yeah.
for now, with all the travel you've done thus far, what's your favorite travel destination so far?
I think I actually just went to Bermuda for the first time, which is such a slept on island. Like it's not in the Caribbean. I've been to like every Caribbean island. It's not in the Caribbean. It's closer to New York. It's like an hour flight, but the water without a filter was this unreal blue turquoise. The people were super friendly. Everything about it, I just love. Like I appreciate that I can go to New York and take an hour and a half flight and I'm in paradise. So that was like everything for me. But going into a place where it just felt easy. It was so much stuff to do and it was such a tiny island. So it felt really easy to navigate. The food was amazing. Like that's probably on my top 3 now, next to St. Lucia.
Amazing. It sounds really nice. So then maybe final rapid fire question here is, what is the best advice that you've ever received?
I think the best advice that I've ever received is to lift as you climb. I think for me, it's really important that as trailblazers in this space where we are the folks that are kind of new in this space, especially when women of color and here make up like less than 2% of tech jobs. I think that it's so important to, like, as we as trailblazers are in the space, learning new things, using our voice to create room and hopefully speak on topics that are going to help folks coming behind us and create these pipelines, that we don't get too caught up in like doing, that we continue to pour into the next generation that's coming in behind us, or even not even a generational thing. It's the next group of folks that want to work in this space. Like it can be very time consuming doing the work that we're doing. And I have to catch myself where it's like, Courtney, don't get too heads down. You're doing this stuff for a reason. You're doing this so that it does help create pipelines for people that look like you. So still make sure that if there are opportunities that you're receiving, if it doesn't align with your why, give that to someone else. Give them the visibility. If there are times that you can carve out of your schedule and block off time to meet with folks that are interested in coming into the space, make the time. Like there has been days, like even yesterday, like I stayed into my office till 7 p.m. Yesterday. I was exhausted, but I still had folks that I had already committed to like having conversations about getting into tech. So just making the time, because in order for us to start to see the needle shift and in order for us to start to see more of us in this space, trailblazing isn't going to be fun all the time. It's going to require us to spend a little more effort when we are exhausted, but we definitely, like, as we continue to move up ladders or get more influence or impact, because a lot of us don't even want to move up the ladder, right? But as you continue to like have more influence and impact, and you are part of the conversations to make decisions for hiring and things like that, don't forget like your why, and don't forget to bring the people that you're doing this for with you. So that's important.
Yeah. I mean, that's so valuable and so inspirational. And I like how you say it's not always going to be easy. But if you have like a voice and a platform and people are starting to see you and to look at you, I feel like so many people are so closed, right? They're so closed about the journey and keeping things almost like the gatekeeping thing, but just keeping the opportunity to themselves, not realizing that there's so much room. There's so much room for everyone. And if one just empowers or enables or is able to inspire or share with someone else, like that's how we build this community. And that's how we create more space for others who are like us, who want to get into this industry. So it's so valuable. So with that, I feel like it's a great time to speak about Amazon's Black Employee Network and this initiative and what it's about. So can you tell us a little bit about this, what it is, and how you got into the position of kind of directing and leading this initiative?
Okay, cool. So our Black Employee Network for the DMV area is one of our employee relation groups for the company that I work for. And part of our mission is being able to recruit, retain, elevate and empower Black employees within the company. And why that is so important is because we are a population of underrepresented humans. People of color, I think, make up between either around like 7%. I don't know if the numbers have changed since then, but it's a very, very low number, right? So we recognize that when you are a underrepresented population in big spaces, it is very easy to kind of get lost or feel like feelings of isolation or feel very unseen or sometimes unheard. So this employee relation group was built to do those things, to build community, to build a safe space for people that look like us, where we can come together and pour into each other and just really create that safe space, have conversations that maybe you don't feel like talking to your team about, or maybe it's something that you feel like other people that come from the same cultural background can relate to. So you feel a little more comfortable having those conversations. Maybe you are looking for like a mentor or a sponsor specifically in the community. So you have like this pool of humans that you can connect with to find mentors and sponsors, and then really understanding like particular policies or issues that specifically impact people of color. Like we take time to really like delve into those and figure out, how do we solve those specific problems? How do we get these things in front of leadership to solve those problems? And it's up to us to really like identify those problems as well. So having that community allows us to have those conversations with our members to uncover what are those pain points that we should be talking to leadership about and getting support on. So a lot of great things I feel like have come out of us having the community, whether it's being able to retain employees, whether it's being able to attract employees. I'm very active on social media. We all know I post a lot of our events, and I've had so many people say, wow, I didn't know your company does stuff like that. Like, I want to come work there. So I just think there's just so much power in having employee relation groups, having the community, and being able just to create different channels from it. So for me, as the director of events, and I have an amazing co-director that I get to pivot ideals off of and talk through, like, what are some of the things culturally that we want to celebrate? What are some of the events that we should put together that highlights different industry insights? So a couple months ago, we had a panel where we got to focus like on mental health. And then we did cybersecurity. And then a few months ago as well, we got to do like an AI panel. So folks that may not be in these spaces, this may have been the first time that they were able to like learn about these things. And being the director of events, we literally complete like the full project management, the full life cycle of coming up with these events from scratch, thinking about what are some of the pain points or what are some of the things that we want to expose our community to. It's impactful, but it's also one of those things where you leave feeling like, okay, I did a really, really great job, because this may have been the first time that they were exposed to these things. So being able to lead marquee events and create these spaces for our community, it's just been a good thing. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, not just from our internal employees, but we actually partner 90% of our events with external ERG. So we're working with a lot of external big tech companies as well, where not only are we building the community within, but we're doing it with our partners, so that now, like, if you need to build your network, which is really important in this time and age, like if you're interested in working for another company, now you have this network of humans, this Rolodex of humans, because you've attended all these different events with different folks, that now you can reach out to them as well. So it's been really interesting, and it's been very rewarding to be able to do these things.
It sounds like a great initiative and such a supportive initiative. I mean, I, for one, would want to join, and I love joining those initiatives because it's like you're saying, like building your network, connecting with other people. How do you find, or do you find that there is good organizational and corporate support for these initiatives internally? And do you get a lot of buy-in from people that have then signed up for the community and is part of the initiative?
I think we've gotten a lot of great buy-in from leaders to support it. And the way that my co-director and I go about doing this is we look at, like, what are some of the DI initiatives and problems that our company is trying to solve? Like, how can we leverage our events to solve those problems? So maybe there's a gap in the number of people of color that they're trying to hire for a specific org. Well, maybe we can host an event that not only brings together the community, but maybe there is a keynote speaker or a panel that talks specifically about the things that particular organization does, or maybe we give them brand awareness by allowing them to bring in a booth. And they're able to, attendees are able to like connect with employees that really work for that specific organization. So not only are we doing this for us, we're also doing this for the org, because now we're solving maybe a hiring gap problem for them. Maybe they are trying to be the org of choice or the employer of choice amongst underrepresented folks. So if they know that we have the Rolodex of humans, how do we get them plugged in? And that has really gotten a lot of leaders buy-in, because they know that if they are looking for the brand awareness, or if they're looking to engage with underrepresented folks, we have them. We're bringing them together from the top tech companies in the DC area. People even fly in for some of these events. So we've gotten buy-in that way, and even funding that way when we're focused on like, okay, what are the diversity, equity, inclusion business problems that we can help solve for the organizations, things like that. I think the other thing is how we execute our events. I think we do a really good job of making sure that if we are program and project managing these events, the full life cycle, like things need to look right. It needs to be tight. Like it needs to be very, very organized. So we spend a lot of time writing these super tight docs. We have a project plan, and we're giving folks visibility into what we're doing so they know exactly where funding is being used for. And we're also taking time to invite a lot of our executives to the events. And I think that's important. I think that a lot of organizations don't tap in to personally inviting their executives so that their executives can see the work that is being done, who is showing up, the community that is impacting, and where the money is going. So doing it that way, given the visibility, being able to solve business problems that the company cares about, and tying that into our mission has helped us be really, really successful in driving these, but also getting leadership's buy-in, because that's going to be key.
Yeah, that's absolutely key. And I guess like having these events, like a spin-off or a run-off from these events, or benefit, depending on what you'd like to call it, is also like the improved mental health, right? Of the people participating in the events, and even for yourself, and like you're saying, you're a co-director. But I mean, how do you find overall the support for mental health in big tech?
We literally just did a mental health panel and we got to talk about like some of the things that as a community folks have expressed that they've struggled with. So I think working backwards, the first thing to address mental health is, what are some of the pain points? What are some of the things that the community that you're wanting to connect with or that you're working with, what are they dealing with? What are the customer anecdotes and things like that you're collecting? Are you doing surveys? Like, are you really understanding like what those problems are? And then once you understand like what those problems are, then you tailor your services and your mental health solutions like to that. So for us, we do know that a lot of folks are feeling like they are working in these high pressure, very demanding spaces, right? So I think it's really important that we're having conversations where we're talking about, okay, what are some of the things that are working for you when we think about creating boundaries? Or what are some of the conversations that we can encourage you to have with your leaders if you are a on-call person that allows you to express yourself in a way that says, I am exhausted. Are there other mechanisms or are there other folks on the team that I can have conversations with or maybe spread the work to, or just giving them like the space, the safe space to even talk about these things. So a lot of the times, like when we're talking about like mental health at our events, or if we're doing these specific panels, we're giving folks like real actionable insight and steps on things that they can do like based off their problems. So for us, we do know that some folks feel like they're trying to stave off isolations in spaces where there's not many of them. They feel like they can't relate, or they feel like they're not being seen. So we have those conversations around mental health where it's like, okay, maybe we need to get you a mentor in your space, or is there someone that you can talk to, like from a sponsor perspective, that can advocate for you to do not only the projects that you're assigned to, but maybe projects that are in other areas that you're interested in. But I think it's just really understanding like, what are those pain points? taking time to ask your audience, whether it's through like surveys and collecting some type of customer anecdotes, or just getting out there and having those raw conversations. And for us, if we're creating these events and spaces that we're getting together really often, because we are getting together really often, we're having those conversations. So we know exactly what our community needs, and then we can tailor events and things like that based off of that.
That's very interesting. Then I think that brought me to another question, just as you were talking through that, is that, I often get this perception, at least from my audience, or kind of the mindset where you have, especially from the female perspective, there is a very unique view on if I am a female and, or I'm a new mom or single mom, can I make it in big tech? Is big tech really for me if that's my situation? So what are your thoughts on that? And what would you say to people who are like planning to be a mom, single mom, new mom in that situation and trying to get into the big tech scenario from a security perspective?
I think that's the beauty of working in tech. It's a variety of different types of roles. So it's not a one flavor fits all, and there's not just one particular role that you have to choose from, right? So I think it's a matter of understanding like, what are the different roles that are interesting to you? And what does that look like from a lifestyle perspective, right? I know with my lifestyle, working in ops, working in the SOC, being on call 24/7, that does not work for my lifestyle. So I'm not going to choose roles where I know I'm going to have to be on call 24/7 or things like that, right? I think it's really just spending time and learning, making Google your best friend and working backwards to figure out like, okay, what are some of the roles that have a little more flexibility where maybe you don't need to be in the office as often. If you're not an engineer, maybe you're doing more on the program management side. As a program owner, I don't need to interface with my engineers 24/7. I need to think about the strategic vision and processes. So a lot of the times I'm on my laptop trying to think big and write these docs. So it does give me the flexibility to work from home at least 2 days a week, right? I know that there are some mandates where folks are being asked or being told to return to office. And I know that can seem a little daunting and a little scary, but I will say that a lot of those companies are saying like, yeah, that's not changing for now, but have the conversations with your leaders. And sometimes they will figure out like, maybe you're not in the office 8 hours. Maybe you're in the office 2 to 3 hours and then you're working from home the rest of the day. You're still meeting this mandate and going in, but maybe there's a little more flexibility in it. So I say that tech there's a role for everyone. I think it's a matter of like, having those honest conversations with your leaders. You'll be surprised, even working in a predominantly male space, I work with a lot of dads. So they are very empathetic to a lot of the moms there because they're dealing with it, but they don't know unless you're having those conversations. So I think it's removing that barrier of feeling like you can't have those conversations and just being really bold and not expecting folks to understand your situation if you're not talking about it. And then 2, finding roles specifically that make sense for your lifestyle. Like if you know as a mom that you don't want to be on call all the time, I wouldn't recommend ops roles. But if you are taking time to like delve into the different opportunities, like figure out roles that make sense for you.
Yeah, that's valuable. And even the statement of figuring this out and then working backwards, because you have to understand what kind of the end goal is here for you in terms of your lifestyle and your life demands and goals, and then meet that back to the job, right? It can't be that you're living your life for the job. It has to be kind of the other way around. And also the fact that it's a two-way street, like you bring value and the company brings value to your life. So it is about like, if you bring value to your role, your team, your organization, then there is almost always the leeway to go and speak with your leaders and negotiate, your specific scenario and use case. I love that answer as well. So now I want to ask you a little bit just about your own company. So you have your own company as well, where you do mentoring and some other things. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So the chic tech firm came from, I was getting, just like you, like a lot of inquiries on like, how do I pivot into tech and what are some of the resources? And I've done this thing, but I don't have a tech roadmap. Like, how do I create that? And what do I need? And it was really birthed out of being able to solve that problem and being able to do it for people that look like me. So I welcome everyone, but I do have a passion specifically for getting more women of color into tech because we are so underrepresented. And I think that we are missing out, like as a community, on all the benefits and opportunities that comes with like getting equity and being able to get these sign-on bonuses and having these really high base salaries. So it's like, how do I make this more accessible? How do I make this so that women that look like me don't feel overwhelmed on where to start, or they don't feel like it's so daunting? How do I give them a real human manifestation of a person that looks like them, that encourages them and says, if I can do it, so can you? So that's why it was birthed. And that's what it focuses on. It focuses on literally like providing the tools and the resources and pointing them to the places to get hands-on experiences. It talks about, or through the coachings, I go through like what things have worked for me in the industry. What are some best practices? What are some things that you can focus on to upskill and also build your confidence? Because I think a lot of it as well is a lot of women are scared to get into the role because of imposter syndrome, or they feel like they're not valuable enough or they're not technical enough. So my company literally spends time like trying to debunk those myths and also just really empowering women to take the leap, take the faith, or if they're already in this space, continue to empower them to succeed. So something I'm super passionate about. And I think that women are wildly capable, more capable than they think they are. So sometimes having like that person or extra push to put them in the right direction is so helpful. So
definitely one of so many passions that we share here, because in reality, I mean, I have the story of in my early days when I just started speaking about my journey, even just on Instagram, I had, like you, people reaching out to me in DM on Instagram and asking about this. And one of the most vivid things I remember is, this young lady, and she came to me and she was like, she's interviewing, but she's just not confident enough. And, I DM'd her and I was like, well, what are your skills, your credentials? And she was like, literally, like she had military experience. She already had so much working experience. She had a CISSP, and she's like, but she's applying for these junior roles and still she has so much imposter syndrome when it comes to the interviewing process, and like one of the biggest, most rewarding things for me was like, I was like, you know what, let's get on a call and let's talk through this, because I feel like there's a mindset issue here, right? And if I can share just a little bit about my experience and my knowledge with her, hopefully it helps her overcome that. And I'll never forget the feeling, like it's still with me today. We're still friends, like to this day, of her when she got 3 job offers after going through 3 interviews from there. And she was able to negotiate her salary from there. Her and I was like, yeah, cool. Do this from a negotiation perspective, this. And it is such an underrated thing how many people struggle with this, right? And especially women from underrepresented communities. Like, we struggle so much with this, and we're often so well qualified, so highly skilled, like have the right aptitude, skills, knowledge, all those things, but still it's a struggle. And even for me, it just came from personal experience of a recruiter actually that told me, when I was taking a job at Microsoft, the recruiter told me, listen, you have to negotiate your way up here because you are one of the best candidates, and it was kind of a recruiter advising me in the process. So, I mean, not many people have that, right? And what you provide is like something that's so undervalued, but so needed and required. So really kudos to you on that one. I think it's so helpful and so valuable to so many.
Thank you. Kudos to you. And I think too, like a lot of us, when you think about like systematically and historically, like a lot of us weren't exposed to these things growing up. Like our parents weren't exposed to these things growing up. So for a lot of us, this is new. And if you don't have representation and you don't see folks that look like you in these roles, it can seem like very, very out of reach. And because we weren't brought up like learning about tech right off the bat or exposed to it, we really don't know like what to negotiate. Like I didn't know what salary to negotiate. I didn't know anybody that was working in tech. But I think that's why it's also so important that those that are already in the space, that we are very transparent about the work that we're doing, how we got here, conversations about salary. I know people are like, oh my gosh, it's so taboo to talk about salary. Well, if you don't talk about it, who's going to talk about it? And how are folks going to have a baseline on how to negotiate? How do they know that they're not being underpaid in comparison to their counterparts? Like, we have to get out of the mindset where we're gatekeeping or feeling like things are so taboo to talk about. No, like, if you are trailblazing or if you're working in this space, we have to be honest. We have to have those conversations, because we literally don't really have like the best starting point or baseline on like what we should be asking for. So I don't know. I just think that's really important. And a lot of us have to like get out of the mindset of not wanting to like share really important information when we think about salaries and the things that we're doing. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So where do people get in contact with you, and how do they work with you? Where do they get in contact with you? Can you tell us a little bit about your platforms? How do they reach you?
Okay, so right now, 2 ways. You can email me at info@cybersecuritybabe.com. If you email me, I can send you the link to my calendar to book a coaching session. To book a coaching session, you can go directly as well to my Instagram page. The link is under the link section. My Instagram handle is at the Cybersecurity Babe, and you're able to book a coaching session that way. My full website should be back up and running soon, but in the interim, those are the best ways to either contact me or also book a session. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So it's Courtney with a K, last name Hayes, Hayes. You can find me on LinkedIn and connect with me that way. I do post a lot of resources and content there around pivoting into cybersecurity, talking about tech resources, talking about a lot of the cool things that my company is working on and the initiatives that I'm driving as well. So connect with me on all those platforms.
Amazing. Courtney, it has been absolutely phenomenal to speak with you. And I honestly feel like this conversation could go on and on and on. So I really want to say thank you so much for joining and for all the incredible insights that you've shared. I mean, it's been absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Like, this has been a great Friday. I'm excited that I got a chance to have these candid conversations with you, and hopefully, I'll be back on here soon.
Absolutely. Definitely. We have to do it.
We have to do it again. It's like talking to my cyber bestie.
Definitely. All right. This is Cybersecurity Uncomplicated, and I'm your host, Cyber Queen.